Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar where we're going to take you through some discussions regarding how AI is reshaping the jobs within the finance industry. My name is Johan Thorngren, and I'm the sales manager for Barona Sweden and responsible for staffing and recruitment services in the finance sector. If you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, we will answer them afterwards, but do not hesitate to post them anyway. And in order to take us through this topic, we have two celebrity guests of sorts. We are in the presence of greatness, two gurus in the AI area, Mattias Fras, who is head of AI strategy and acceleration at Nordea. Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Thank you. Maybe you want to tell a bit about what you're doing at Nordea?
Yeah, so I am, you could say I'm overseeing the stuff we do within the AI space. So my title is Head of Strategy and Acceleration. The strategy part is about figuring out how we should organize and how should our life cycle look like, and how do we view ethics and all these kind of more big questions around AI, since it's a quite new thing. And then the acceleration is about basically getting stuff done, so supporting use cases across the bank.
Good. Very welcome. And also we have our own Kirsi Louhelainen from Barona, the CTO at Barona Tech. And please share what you're doing currently.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Actually, my role has been quite similar, different titles, same responsibilities. So overseeing the big strategy. We've had our own development team at Barona Tech that has been supporting and running and developing AI. I've been sort of internally reaching out the adaptation of AI. We've been creating our own ethics code as well. And I think my main gist has been that it's just one technology among others. So we should not be scared of it or think it solves everything. You just take it as part of the digitalization. And actually, I've been spending a lot of time lately in one of our startups fully owned by Barona, which is automating invoice handling in the finance sector. So that's been pretty fun.
So very, very interesting. This is obviously AI is a very big topic. So we're going to start off with a general question. AI has been around for quite some time. It's not that new, but the applications area might be. So what is your general view on AI? Please, Mattias, you can start.
So maybe I can tell a short story about where I'm coming from and where I am now. And so I'm coming from management consulting, and we're working on driving change for 12 years. So that could be outsourcing, that could be shared services, that could be lean, that could be operational excellence, that could be new operation strategies, new operating models, and everything. And to be honest, I have never really seen any big productivity gains from all the stuff I did over the 12 years as a management consultant. And then only a few years back, or 5, 6 years ago, we started with this robotics automation thing, and I've been sort of part of building up this in Nordea. And then that was the first time I saw that you could really achieve something quite dramatic in a short period of time. So if you download a robotics license, you have 10 FTEs, what do you do with them, kind of thing. So that kind of opened my eyes to this, technology. And that was only 5 years ago, and nobody talked about AI 5 years ago in banking, right? So I talked about it. So robotics started happening, and then we went into, so we built that up, and we now have 300 robots in the bank, completing 500,000 tasks per month. So, and then we next step was to develop the virtual agent, the chatbot. So kind of the same thing there. It started small, but now we call it she because her name's Noah, is having about 150,000 conversations per month with employees and customers, right? And then we built this, and since a couple of years back we built this AI applications. A few of them are in production, and you can see that the quite fast become useful. So that is what drives me, and that's why I'm so excited about this. I'm not a data scientist, unfortunately. I'm not even an engineer. I'm a business guy, and but I really see the potential, and I really believe it's going to change. I like the comparison with electricity that Andrew Ng is saying. It's really like the new electricity. It's going to transform everything, or every industry, some more, some less. But that is what gets me excited. But where we are at the moment, we have only scratched the surface. Everybody is in the first chapter of this 100-chapter book or so about AI. So we're just in the beginning.
I totally agree with you. And it's, for me, I think AI is really a toolbox. It's a toolbox which has a giant set of tools, and we typically only 1 or 2 for a specific task. And as we start uncovering those tools and really starting to learn how to use them, that's how we uncover the potential. And I think what you actually mentioned here was a lot of things you've done. They have technically nothing to do with AI, and I think that really nicely summarizes the way that we are now in a big change digitally. We are changing a lot of things in how we do, and AI is one really critical component of that toolbox, but it's not the only one. If you think software robotics, which is basically a fancy way of saying that you automate macros, the way you did 20 years ago in Excel, when you combine that, for instance, with an AI product, that can actually bring some intelligence to something that was previously stupid automation, but that doesn't mean that the automation itself doesn't have value. I totally agree that we are going to change a lot of things in the span of few years, and I would say that this goes maybe a bit off actual banking, but in the financial departments, I say that in 3 to 5 years we will be completely transformed them. Since one of those startups I've been working with and sparring with, they've been going to something like 85% accuracy in predicting invoice dimensions, which is sort of boring and tedious work that is basically just required by law. So it's a supported function, it takes a lot of time, and it could be automated. And my claim is that financial departments are undergoing a sea change in just a few years. After that, it's going to be super cheap and affordable. And that sort of change we are going to see throughout the organizations. We are looking into changing in how we process things, but also hopefully new inventions and new products.
When I listen to you talking about this, I mean, being a layman in this area, basically, not technically I'm proficient, but the concept of AI is kind of polarized. You either have basically people who are kind of afraid of it because it's going to be, there's a apocalyptic dimension, basically talking about like robots, terminators and stuff, and then you also have the impact. So, and Mattias, we have talked about this, the positive, to actively see this as a positive development. And I mean, is that something that you can share a bit about at Nordea, how your perception of AI is there?
Yeah, sure. And there are, as you see, there are different, some of the smartest people in the world believe AI is a dangerous thing, and some other smart people think it's a good thing. And I do believe when it comes, for example, to weapons, especially then it should be basically banned, right? Like Max Tegmark is driving this very clearly, and I think that is important. But in terms of banking, or society, I think that it's inevitable that it's going to come, because it's already happening, and it's been driven by these large tech giants like Google. Google is an AI first company now, and they will push the boundaries to keep on doing it, and we have no choice but also do that. But I truly believe that it can, if we do it right, it can lead to something good. I mean, it could lead to that we have more fun work, a better experience for the customers. But there are a lot of things that needs to be figured out, and so we've done an AI manifest at Nordea, basically saying we believe it's for the good. We believe it's going to change things for the better for our customers, for our employees, for our partners. We realize that there are some challenges, especially around ethics and data sourcing, and there is also some challenges around GDPR. Nobody really knows what GDPR. We know what kind of says, but we don't know how it will be interpreted yet. So there's a lot of uncertainty. But we believe that it's for the good, and it's basically trying to get people to getting to it and understanding what it might mean, because AI, I think, means different to different people. So it's definitely gonna change things, and I think you almost have to decide whether you think it's gonna change things for the better or not, because it's, although it's always talk about technology now, but I think it's never been more about the people, because the people will be the AI. So that was a long answer, but
that's a good answer. So, I mean, I think it's important also that what you mentioned, that you actively see this as a positive development, because it's important to have that point. And regarding the implementation, I mean, you've been mentioning some stuff that has been implemented. I mean, what kind of difficulties and challenges do you see when you implement these new technologies, mainly?
Well, I would actually build on that, the previous topic, because we built our own ethical principles. And what actually happened was, in the very first principle, we actually stated this is something that we can use for every single project. It doesn't matter whether it utilizes AI or not, because the point here is that you choose first whether you build good things, and then the technology is simply following. So I think that's something that we should use as an underlying principle in development.
Okay. And during the implementations, I mean, you've done some efforts, and you're working on some projects, but then what further opportunities do you see in the finance sector when developing AI solutions or robotics and Nordea, or in general, for what you're working on?
Well, I think overall, as we can see, there is a lot of things we can do in the prediction side, analytics side, and of course that is sort of just the traditional analysis there, as you would say. So you start to learn about your own company and data. And then of course there is the way, I would say there are two broad categories. You can disagree with me if you want, but there is a way of improving the current processes, which is the sort of boring back office job that can actually make huge gains in efficiency. And this applies to every single industry, also banking. I think you might have a little harder time there because you have a lot of legacy and a lot of regulation as well. But then there's also the new business, and that is something that we don't quite yet know what, but it does mean that there might be some sort of like automated jobs, sort of like robots working for us type of things.
That brings us, if you
no, but I like what you say, and I when I talk to my colleagues or the managers in the bank about this, I'm trying to convey like a new way of thinking about solving the problems. So I talk about this Horizon 1, 2, 3. So Horizon 1 is what you said, is like improve the current, and Horizon 2 is creating new with new technology, and maybe Horizon 3 is disruption or something like that. The thing is that we spend 99% on Horizon 1 stuff. So we are spending most of our time trying to improve the current with robotics or machine learning or chatbots or whatever. And the thing is that I think we need to go from like try to do the best with what we have to dream up where you want to be, and then design for that and build that. And because you can actually do that now, because every problem we could possibly have in Nordea right now has already been solved somewhere in the world. So basically the challenge is more like, it's not so much, how do we solve this problem? It's like, what problem do you want to solve?
And that's actually why I like so much. You have a business background and you actually driving this. Because I'm an engineer, so I have there's certain bias when I start talking about AI. They're like, okay, the engineer there, she wants to build things. So that's why one of those things we have to have is business people must understand the potential of technology. We have to have the conversation going, and it doesn't mean that everyone has to understand AI in a deep level. So for instance, some controllers we were discussing with were asking, like, what do I have to understand about AI in my job, because AI is coming also with financial department. And I said, well, nothing else but the basic. You have to understand the potential, but then you also have to be ready to talk with the engineers, because that's the only way you can, because you have the ideas of what you can do to improve the thing, and you can do them alone. And I think that's something people think that you can just throw an engineer at the problem, or the business understands what to do when they don't actually know the full potential of solutions at hand.
Yeah, and that's one of the fun things. you definitely need to have cross-functional teams to solve this kind of problems. It's not like it used to be like business writes the business requirements, hand over to IT, they build something, then it goes back and forth. But now it's like we need a team with an owner of the KPI. We need SMEs, we need a data scientist, data engineer, we need a machine learning or front-end developer, we need Scrum Master, we need an architect. So you need all this kind of stuff in a team that's going to develop something like your invoicing tool, for example. That's also the good thing. And we need the ethics as well.
Yeah. And I would go even as far as say that the team itself needs to be cross-disciplinary. Also, once that Barona we've done to solve this is that different branches of Barona, different operations have appointed their own, we call them digital managers, but the actual title is often something like business developer. But the fact is that those people have technical background, and then they come in as a business developer, so they don't have the bias of the IT guy. They have the certain mandate to develop business, but they actually understand what you can do a little better than the existing business owners, and that creates a really good discussion, and they can get started on the project. So I think that's
when I was in California, I met some of these startups there, and the data scientists, and also the bigger companies. Data scientists, several of them said that they go out and they sit in the business for months to really understand the processes and the problems, and then they go back and then they shape a team and then they solve the problems, because then they know usually what you think you're going to solve in the beginning might not be what you actually should do in the end.
Being a consultant, and the rule number one of a consultant is that never deliver what the customer asks, deliver what they actually meant, because it's very hard to follow the request first.
Yeah, and talking about this like new processes and new technologies, and a question I have then, of course, is to what kind of impact does it have on job roles in the finance industry? Talking about new technology and all this that you're talking about.
Yeah, that is it's an interesting question, and I'd love to discuss it. And I think the quick answer is that we don't know. We can assume that a lot of the repetitive tasks will be done by computers instead, so it will be less of that. It will be there will be new jobs created. So I've probably been part of creating 5 or 6 different new type of jobs over the last year in Nordea. So that could be an AI trainer, or it could be like a machine learning mechanic or whatever. So many jobs. But of course, so let's see what the net effect from the new jobs and the current jobs will be. But there's so many things going into this. Like, what will the bank look like in 5 years or 5 to 10 years? What will banking look like? Some banks will be maybe more back-end providers, some will be platforms, some will be customer-facing solution providers. So there will be like different system of things. So it's hard to predict, but and I think it's going to take some time as well, because it used to be a lot of headlines only a couple of years ago that the robots are taking our jobs in many of the papers that I read. And there's not so much talk anymore, because we've come to realize it's not going to happen overnight. It's not like robots are standing outside the door just waiting to take our jobs. It's like, what do we do with this technology, with these tools, as you explained? And it's gonna take a while to figure that out. Even though the technology is there, we are not sort of ready, and we have realized it's hard to put into production. It's hard to interpret GDPR and those kind of things. So it's gonna take some time. But what happens? You can have some thought experience. What happens if you have if you put an algorithm on your investment decision board? What is going to happen then in the relationship between the machine and the humans, and how is that going to change things? I think we will find out, but now it's really hard to make any kind of predictions other than the repetitive and mundane tasks will disappear.
Well, I'm actually building that because one sort of estimate has been that there is a sheer polarization in jobs. So what we will actually automate, well, technically, yes, trivial tasks will be automated, but there will be new in a way, trivial tasks about supervising machines. So actually what might actually get lost is sort of the middle of the back, like our jobs. And what will come in addition is things that require maybe a bit more. For instance, you don't just do certain repetitive tasks, you will need to actually discuss with the business about how these numbers affect them. But then there are other jobs where you supervise things. If you think this, maybe like outside the banking perspective, there's the modern jack of all trades type of thing. For instance, if you think these days forestry equipment, that's pretty much self-driving, but it does require a person there. And that type of jobs might actually come. For instance, at Barona, we've been recruiting robot supervisors in a new car manufacturing plants. And it's technically, it's a completely new job. There is no training for that, and it doesn't mean it's just boring and you sit as the robot does one thing. But it is a different kind of job from before. So yes, definitely many repetitive tasks. So many, obviously many functions will change. You can, for instance, outsource things. You can do them elsewhere if there's a support function. And in customer service, I think some things will change. I mean, think about how banking, I'm a layman in the banking area, I'm just a customer basically. So in 20 years ago, I would walk to the banking branch and talk with people. And these days, if I actually have to go to the bank, I feel awful because I think the bank hasn't served me well. What I want is the application. I want immediate response. I want things to be done on my cell phone. And this is, I think, also the requirements have changed quite a lot. But of course, in the meantime, I think you will have to maintain both the new ways of interacting and also at the same time support the elderly people because they will want to visit Mac still.
And connecting to this, I mean, given your experience within your organizations, I mean, how when you approach talking about the implementation of these kind of solutions, I mean, how are you met by employees? Are they scared, or is it like they understand that this is something that is coming necessary, kind of unavoidable?
There is definitely people who are scared, and that's until you explain them what this means. I think the main part, because, well, I mentioned that in financial departments we've been already working on this. Of course, people will be afraid if the very thing that they've been doing all their life is going to change. But of course, they're not so. The number one is not really a fear for themselves as much as the fear that the solutions don't work. So that you have to be very careful. You have to really work with the people. You have to very sort of develop things with them, and you have to ensure that they have sufficient quality all the way. Because then they can eventually do also other things as their time is released. But before, it doesn't work until the solutions work to a certain level. Otherwise, you're just putting an extra burden to the people because now they have to also clean up the mess. And I don't know if you encounter this, but I think one problem with machine learning type implementations is that what actually happens is there is, since machines have no context. So, for instance, if you do statistical analysis and you do a prediction, it doesn't have the context like people would do. So it's when it goes bad, it does much worse than actually some very green summer worker who is trying to do their job. So it might get things right 80 or 90% of the time, but when it goes wrong, it goes really wrong. And that's when people start thinking the machine is broken. And you have to be able to communicate that machine isn't broken. It just doesn't have this, it doesn't think the way people do. So, for instance, any human being understands that desserts and machines, like, let's say tractors, are not the same thing, but how would the machine know?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that I think machine learning will hit, for the first time, and maybe, or, it's the white collar jobs that will be affected more than the blue collar jobs. So I think that there's a scare. And I think in this, last year, McKinsey Global Institute had this report which was quite comprehensive, saying that 50% of the jobs that is done, or the activities that's done in the global economy, can be automated by already existing technology. I think banking was like 47%. But only 5% of the jobs can be automated away entirely. So that means that everybody will be affected by it, but only a few jobs will disappear, so the rest will remain in some shape or form. So I think it's more about for a bank, it's and for similar industries, I think it's there's starting to be questions now around, okay, how do we need to reskill our workforce? So I have these meetings now with these strategic workforce capability teams in HR to see, okay, what capabilities do we need in a couple of years or in 5 years? And I also, one thing I miss here is the from politics, like politicians, like they're not really addressing this risk because there will be a lot of people that will be unemployed and that will need to be reskilled, and there needs to be opportunities open up for them. And that's one thing I expect to have. I expect them to be more. I think Finland have had this discussion about being Barona for a while, and I mean that might be part of the solution. I don't know, but I think from a society perspective, the politicians need to step in here and understand what this might mean, and that I'm kind of missing. But addressing it from that perspective, I think will maybe reduce the fear, because the fact is that Nordic countries are probably best prepared for this in the world, because we have the social welfare systems pretty well built out. That's something that you don't have in America or in Asia or anywhere else, right? So we have a good starting point, but I think it needs to be addressed to a higher extent, because there is a fear. I agree. And I have unions calling me and wanting to get answers from me, and I don't have any answers, but they need to start thinking about this.
I think it's a good point that we are in a very good position here in the Nordics, because there is a very high level of education. People are capable of a lot of things, and I do think that actually this sort of education is new short-term education is one of the keys. And it's actually something we've been doing. We have been thinking this also in terms of that when we provide new services that include AI, that include reshaping of jobs, that we should package that maybe with a complementary training for people who need to be reskilled. And that sort of thing should be much more common. I think there is still, to my eyes, it seems there is still a bit too much reverence to this high-level education, that you always have to have a certain type of degree. And what you will see, and I think I've been witnessing this already, is there is a lot of movement now, sort of around different jobs. So you don't do just one thing and then sort of progress in that one thing. But as to individual, even if you stay in the same company, as your job changes, one of the key skills is that you have to be ready to sort of also improve your own job. So this is sort of more of a mindset than the training. So you will want to, not so that you are hired to one job and then you type away that one thing and ask for instructions, but rather that you constantly evaluate how could this job be done better, because that's going to happen anyway, and people who do this are actually going to be the forerunners. They will always be employed.
Just connecting to that one, I mean, if you were to advise a CFO or finance manager or someone hiring you in the finance industry, what would your kind of advice be when they're thinking about how they should look at competence, talent acquisition in the future? If you were to kind of directly advise them.
I mean, you're recruiting companies, you know better than me. I mean, what I see, like what I need to make things happen are basically problem solvers in general. So that could be an IT person, that could be a business person, that could be a liberal arts person, and that could be different kind of profiles. But problem solvers and data savvy people and tech savvy people that are passionate about this stuff. Right now, that's what I need. But then, so I think what we need to focus on now is to get like our top management to understand that, so they can support that, and then build from that. Because then when you start getting into this, I think you will see what kind of competence you need. But right now, it's like it's difficult to say that it's clear that it's definitely new kinds of people. Banks and other companies are really, we've been trying to dummy-proof our companies for the last 10 years or so, and compliance is coming to place, especially in the financial industry. So that has meant that you get, so the good employee is following process. But what is required now is that it's a different kind of skill. It's someone that can solve a problem that is not maybe that evident. Preferably, dream up a solution, basically. So that's a challenge for us because we are not problem solvers anymore. We are, we are following the procedures. And so when we have a problem, we call the consultant, right? They get paid to solve problems. I'm kind of exaggerating now, but it might be my point. So we need to get more problem solvers in the bank.
I will also add people skills, because I think people will need to work together to create these new solutions to improve their jobs. So this is, even though you mentioned they need to be technical skills, I would actually put even more weight on the people, the attitude and the people skills.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously this is such a big topic. It's very general, and it's a top line discussion that we're having here. We could have lots of webinars on this. So just a bit to wrap it up, if you were to dream up your ideal kind of AI solution that you would like to see anywhere, what would you do? What would you like to see, Mattias, first?
Wow. I'll just, I'll take an example in my industry.
Yeah.
I would like to be able to provide like your individual banking assistant. So kind of do the Netflix of banking, right? Where you have, based on your preferences, your data, this is what you need, dear customer. You don't have to look at all this stuff. This is you. This is what we think you need. So make it more customized, and I think that's where I dream about banking. Banking used to be you walked into the branch and you have this person that cares about you. Then digitalization came, self-service on the internet, pretty much crappy. Every site is crappy and it's hard to find stuff. To going back to some chatbots, okay, that's nice, but there are a lot of bad chatbots out there. But back to like a virtual assistant that can serve you how long you want, whenever you want, how fast you want, and using your data so it can be very relevant. Then you're almost back to the way it used to be, but even more customized. And if you add like voice to that, which is by the way coming very fast now, you can also almost go back to analog again, where you can talk.
That is so interesting, because we've been talking about that as in a recruitment sense. So we'd like to have a digital assistant for recruitment.
Yeah.
And that is somebody who is something that is always constantly following things, knowing how my industry is going, what should I do, how should I train, what might be the next career step. So I think those types of assistants are coming. But if we go completely outside of the scope, what I'm looking for is actually utilizing AI in also in a very broad sense of things like medical advances and things like solving the energy issues we have now. Because those things are actually the kind that we can actually very easily, well, not easily, but we can solve using technology. And that is, I think, the best way to use those solutions. I think we will see both.
I'm looking forward to the service development.
Yeah,
it's going to be awesome. Thank you both for joining and bringing some clarity and discussing these topics. And thank you all for listening. And as mentioned previously, do not hesitate to submit any comments or questions, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks.